Hey, hope you're good. Today we have a vintage drum machine legend, the TR-707 from 1985. This came out around the same time as the Juno 106 that came out in '84. So a lot of people were looking for kind of cheap alternatives to really big synthesizers and drum machines. So if they didn't want an 808 or a 909, they could go with something cheaper, which was the 707. Kind of like the Juno 106. Like a lot of really cheap drum machines of the day, you can kind of tell it's made out of plastic. So it's not super high quality, and it does use entirely digital samples. And that is cool. Digital drum machines were all the rage in the mid to late 80s because stuff like the Linn drum existed. And the sounds from this are actually quite good compared to a lot of entry-level drum machines of the day. This is the third digital drum machine that I've had in my studio, and it's definitely the one that sounds the best, although that's not really a fair comparison because the other two are the RZ1 and the 505. This actually has quite a good sequencer, and it has individual outs for all of the different channels on it. It has a built-in mixer for doing stuff live, and even though a lot of people seem to not like the grid-style sequencer that it has, I actually think it's really intuitive to use. It did take me looking at the manual. It wasn't quite as simple as something like a Drum Brute of modern times. But for its time, it is incredibly easy to use. Once you figure out which buttons to press to do which things, it is so easy. Because it's from 1985, it is right in that prime early MIDI era, so it does have MIDI in and out, which is quite nice. That has a lot of good programming stuff built in that a lot of drum machines of the era did not have, so that's kind of cool. Like you have the ability to do flams and shuffle and a lot of stuff like that. The one thing that made me really excited to review this is looking up on Vintage Synth Explorer. Literally the first line of the description is a very underrated drum machine. Yet the VSE rating is 2 stars and the user rating is over 4. I don't know who is underrating it, but it seems like it's VSE themselves. I would not go so far as to call this a 4-star drum machine, not even close. This might be more of a 3-star, just because the build quality isn't that great, and the sounds are quite limited. You literally can't do anything to tweak the sounds at all. And there are just some other workflow and just usability things about it that really did not age well. So maybe back in the day it could have been a 4-star machine simply for the price alone, but these days it's looking more like a 3-star in my eyes. But it does have quite a lot of features as far as programming. Like I said, you have shuffle and flam. You have a lot of patterns and tracks that you can write to. It does have a 16-step sequencer, which is really nice. And like I said, the overall programming is quite easy. The sounds are pretty good. They're very similar to a lot of the digital sounds that you can get on the 909, which was a hybrid analog and digital drum machine. But that was built quite a lot better, and it had a lot more options for changing the individual sounds. It definitely aged better than something like the RZ1 or TR-505, but not quite as well as the 808 or 909. I will give it credit where credit is due. It does have a lot more features than something like the 303, which is still expensive these days. These, on the other hand, not expensive. They're like $500. And honestly, for $500, they're kind of worth it. If you can get one that has been serviced, that is the major stipulation with these. They can get quite fuzzy and noisy. There are some other things that I discovered while using it that are not amazing, but if you can get one serviced, then that's the way to go. Alright, so let me stop talking about it and we can actually go into it and listen to it. Alright, as promised, the legend, the TR-707. Now, the sounds in this are actually quite good. I really like the sounds on this drum machine. Let's listen to them. Here's the 2 bass drums. Pretty good. Snare drums. Pretty good. The toms. Okay. Rim shot. Pretty good. Cowbell. Not too bad. The clap and the tambourine. Okay. The hi-hats. Pretty nice. And then the cymbals. Not too shabby. And like I said, doing a sequence on this is quite easy. In fact, I already made my own, and it was quite easy to make. Very classic drum sounds of the 80s. Also, something that I really love is that, I know I mentioned this, but it has not only MIDI, but full-size 1/4 inch outputs for every single channel on the back, and that is so awesome! It's a feature that you would come to expect on a normal drum machine of these days, but of those days, I don't know. This was pretty sweet for an entry-level drum machine like this. Now I thought, of course, if I have Roland's entry-level drum machine from the 80s around the same time that they released their entry-level synth, the Juno 106, also with MIDI, we have to have the 707 and the Juno together. So I made this cool song, and I was about to record the drums for this song. It sounds awesome. Then we hit start on the drum machine. Wait a minute. Why? What? 96. Why aren't they syncing up? So, either one of two things, I'm assuming. Either this is just a potentiometer and it just kind of estimates roughly what tempo you're trying to go for there, or this is not calibrated and 96 BPM is not actually 96. So that was the thing I was talking about before, where using this thing actually in a setting with other things is not really that amazing these days unless you had it serviced. And like I said, I don't know if that's due to it not actually being quantized despite it saying it's 96 BPM, or just it not being calibrated properly, but that is something to note with these. But guess what? They have MIDI, which means we can still do exactly what we want. We just won't be able to program on this. We'll have to program it on that instead. Let's do that. So, the TR-707, is it a good drum machine? Yes. Is it a good drum machine for the price? Maybe. For what it is, it's a vintage drum machine, and it's one of the first digital drum machines that Roland ever made. And for what it is, it's really good. And if you can get it for $500-600 or less, then it's a good deal. As far as modern drum machines go, there are so much better modern drum machines that can do way more for way less. For what it is, for the era, it's pretty great. Let's face it, if you're buying vintage gear, you're probably not getting it for value, you're probably getting it for exactly what it is. Like, if you're getting a Juno, you're not getting it for value because you could get Arturia's Juno plugin, or you could get any number of other manufacturers' Juno plugin, or if you have FL Studio, you have one built in. And those are all either free or very cheap, like $150 or less. If you get a real Juno, you're getting it because it is the real thing and because you want that thing. And I think there's definitely something to be said for having one of these, because the workflow is good and the sounds are good, and a lot of the features are really good. It's just that there are a few little workarounds, just the little idiosyncrasies of vintage gear that you kind of have to work around sometimes and figure out as you go. And gear like the Juno also has its own stuff like that, where it's got the chorus noise. And sometimes they're a little scratchy if they're older. You gotta replace the voice chips. They're not low maintenance things that you can just set it and forget it like modern gear, but you're getting it for the experience and for the sound. And this is definitely one of those things where you would get it for both. And it is pretty sweet. I think if I could just figure out how to get the tempo to sync properly to the BPM that it says it is, then it would be a no-brainer for me. I really like the sounds, I really like the workflow, I love the individual quarter-inch outputs, I love MIDI. A lot of things about this are really cool. And it's pretty portable too. Honestly, even though it's not made out of metal or anything heavy like that, that makes it a lot more portable, and it's still pretty durable, it's just a little plasticky. So yeah, it's a really cool vintage drum machine. Highly recommend you check one of these out if you have the chance. Let me know about your experiences with these down in the comments. And yeah, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.